Decker's been my thing from the day I was born, and I was going to be successful in it if I possibly could. I never had any thought of anything else.
Black & Decker, a legendary name. Around the world, in the sky, in our hands. And for more than 6 decades, Al Decker has been a part of it. From sweeping the factory floor to managing the company and producing the longest period of growth in Black & Decker's history.
Al Decker laid the foundation for what our company is today. He is truly a remarkable man.
Al Decker Jr. was born in Baltimore in 1908. His father, Alonzo Sr., was an engineer with big ideas. Together with a partner, S. Duncan Black, he started a machine shop. Their first products were manufactured for inventors and other customers. But the partners were determined to design and build their own products for the industrial tool market. They set their sights on making a drill that was lighter and easier to use. Little did they know they would revolutionize the power tool industry.
They were both in my father's kitchen one Saturday, and they were sitting around a table trying to get a bright idea of how they could do this. At the same time, they'd had a contract for making parts for the Colt automatic, and Father had a Colt automatic laying on the kitchen table. And as they were looking at the sky or the stars or whatever, each one of them happened to look at that Colt automatic. And so my mother tells me that the two of them said, "That's it," at the same time, with a pistol grip and a trigger switch, which was the thing that really changed the portable electric drill into something that anybody can use.
It was 1916, and Black & Decker was off and running in the portable power tool business. And Al Jr. was right at his father's side.
I was always there with my father. When school was over at 3 o'clock, I walked over to the factory. This happened every day, and I stayed in the factory until Father went home. And then I rode home with him in the car. In the summer times, I worked at the factory. I had to get a special permit because I started to work at 14.
Determined to follow in his father's footsteps, Al studied engineering at Cornell. After graduating in 1929, he accepted his father's invitation to handle some business for the company overseas.
My father said that he would like to send me to Europe to demonstrate one of the newest products that Black & Decker had put out, which was an automatic polisher for polishing automobiles. Then after having done that, they sent me into Russia, and I was into Russia for 2 months trying to set up a Black & Decker service station. They figured that the world was going to be their market rather than just the United States.
Back in the U.S., Al went on the Black & Decker payroll as a product demonstrator at the company's permanent exhibit on the boardwalk in Atlantic City.
I learned a lot about how to talk to people, how to talk to people particularly about the products that we had, because I had to know all the answers.
Then the Great Depression hit.
Things began to look a little bad in the economy. And in December of 1931, my father called me in and said, "Son, we're going to have to lay off an awful lot of people because business is really going to hell in a handbasket." And he said, "And I'm not going to lay off anybody else as long as you're here, so you're going to have to be number one." I said, "I understand, Father." Okay.
Al got a job selling soap. His pay was $10 a week, $8 of which he spent filling his car with gas to make his sales calls. Finally, in 1933, he got a chance to work for Black & Decker again.
I was one of the first that was brought back. And my job when I was brought back was a floor sweeper with a broom. And I didn't mind a bit. I was so glad to get out of that salesman's job selling cleaning powders that I was mighty glad to get here.
Back with the company that he had dreamed would be his life, Al Decker now worked hard to make his dream a lasting reality. Over the next decade, he came to know the company inside out, working in manufacturing, production, and in engineering, demonstrating a unique breadth of talent and versatility. Along with the practical knowledge of his hands-on experience, he applied the latest scientific management techniques, implementing changes all the way down the line, including introducing a new line of electric hammers, which he designed and developed himself. In recognition of his growing value to the company, in 1940, at age 32, he was made a vice president and elected to the board of directors, just in time to face an even bigger challenge. The United States entered World War II, and Black & Decker became an important tool in her defense.
The demand for electric drills just started to ascend, and it mainly was because in building airplanes, all the holes were all drilled with electric drills. So we began getting orders for electric drills that were just out of this world. And we had to really double our production.
Al was offered a commission in the Army, but the government declared his work at Black & Decker essential to the war effort, and so he stayed and fought the war on the production line. His country said thank you by awarding Black & Decker 3 prestigious E awards, E for excellence. It was a proud moment, but a short one. Al Decker was already thinking about the future. Reports were crossing his desk that airplane factory employees were taking Black & Decker drills home with them. Al sensed a marketing opportunity and immediately got the company working on something brand new, a drill for consumers, one that was inexpensive, lightweight, and with enough power to use on projects around the house. In 1946, Black & Decker unveiled a line of home utility electric products. Within 3 years, the company made and sold over 1 million quarter-inch drills. The do-it-yourself market was born.
It was much more successful than we ever dreamed that it was going to be. And we followed up with a very expanded line of products for all of those people who do it themselves. And it's been an excellent market, and still is.
Black & Decker became a household name for a new generation of Americans. But in the international market, it was a different story. Product specifications varied from country to country, and tariffs were high. Exporting was nearly impossible. The only solution was to set up manufacturing operations within other countries.
I was the one that got the job. So I did a lot of traveling. I expected I spent almost 50% of my time for 4 or 5 years out of this country. I was not only building the manufacturing, but I was building the whole organization in each one of the countries. When you're in the international business and you have a manufacturing and sales operation in that country, it is much better from most points of view for the consumer to think that that product is a product of that country, not one that they've gotten from outside. Now, we did not do, as many American companies do, we didn't send Americans over there to operate those companies. We found the kind of people in those countries that could run the corporation, that particular corporation, themselves. And one of the things that I determined in the very beginning, that I was not going to be just one man going over and talking to the men in the factory. I had to involve their families. So I always took my wife on every one of these trips.
It was a lot of fun, and also it was a lot of work. A lot of people thought that we just went there and had a good time, which we did. We had a good time, but we also worked.
And it really built an organization, a worldwide organization, that was very close together and very happy and very successful.
So successful, in fact, that eventually Black & Decker's international business would account for half of the company's sales. Through the 1950s, sales were booming, and Al was working harder than ever, responsible for production and manufacturing, as well as the company's overseas operations. In 1956, Alonzo Decker Sr. died. His partner, Mr. Black, had passed away 5 years earlier. Now, the baton of leadership passed to a new generation, and Al carried it like his father before him, looking for a way to improve the electric drill.
Beginning with World War II, there was tremendous change in the batteries, particularly rechargeable batteries. I think they were used in driving torpedoes. And in those batteries that were much more efficient than anything we'd ever had before, and they were rechargeable. I had been reading about these for quite some time, and the improvement in the batteries was so substantial. I kept wondering if we couldn't possibly make such an improvement in a power drill that could make use of batteries.
In 1960, Al was elected president of Black & Decker. The next year, he introduced the world's first cordless rechargeable power tool, breaking ground in yet another new market. A market that reached all the way to the moon, when Black & Decker developed a special cordless drill for NASA to use in obtaining core samples from the lunar surface on the Apollo 15 mission in 1971. Al Decker's success may have taken the company out of this world, but in many ways, his greatest success was his down-to-earth work ethic, something he learned from his father.
One of the things that my father always did was to regularly walk through the factory, talk to people, see what was going on, stop and say how to do. If he didn't, how's your brother, how's your son doing? And he helped build a very close family of workers. I learned to do the same thing from him. Well, one thing that I've learned in life, if you really want to be successful, you had to depend upon other people as well as yourself. You therefore had to conduct yourself the way you wanted other people to conduct themselves. So, I never bothered about what hours I was supposed to work, whether I got paid for them or not. If a job needed to be done, I wanted to get it done. If it took all day, all night, all week, that's the way I want to work. And although I don't expect all people to work the same way, at least I try to instill in them that being responsible for the job that you have and being sure that that responsibility is fulfilled is one of the biggest things that makes a success or failure.
It was educational, it was inspirational, it was exciting.
Tuck Maddox worked at Black & Decker for 24 years. For 10 of those years, he worked directly for Al Decker as a corporate vice president.
He's older and I'm no longer here. He was firm, he was fair, he was always interested in results, and there were times when I was afraid of him. But what a discipline. He set a good example in terms of good work habits, attention to detail, never shorting on the product or the service or the integrity of the company. In my view, he was the conscience of the company.
In 1965, Al Decker took another giant stride as he followed in his father's footsteps, this time becoming chief executive officer, and in 1968, chairman of the board. Under his leadership, the corporation grew as never before, acquiring other companies and creating new products, not only for the basement workshop, but also for the lawn and garden. Throughout the company's long history, its sales had grown steadily. The first president, S.D. Black, brought sales to $30 million in 1952. The second president, Alonzo Decker Sr., increased sales to $50 million in 1956. And under the third president, R.D. Black, sales rose to $100 million in 1964. But under Al Decker, the company soared to even greater heights, becoming a darling of Wall Street. By the time he stepped aside as CEO in 1975, Black & Decker's annual sales had grown to almost $650 million. Today, Al is marking his 53rd year as a member of the Black & Decker board, serving as honorary chairman. But he and Virginia spend much of their time on their farm overlooking the Sassafras River off of Maryland's Chesapeake Bay.
A farm is a good place for a man to learn a lot of things about nature, and then learning about nature, learning a lot of things about himself. And a farm is a place where you can't sit still and do nothing. You've got to keep working at it. And in working at it, it helps to keep you physically active, mentally active, and keeps you alive.
I like working, doing something together with my husband. Most people will say, what in the world do you do all day up on the farm? I said, we never have enough time.
One thing that Al still has time for is helping others. For years, he's shared his leadership skills with other businesses by serving on their boards of directors. And he's given of his personal wealth and raised funds to help dozens of institutions in need. Tom Storrs, former chairman of Nations Bank, served with Al on the boards of both Black & Decker and the Federal Reserve Bank of Richmond.
Al became chairman there in 1958, and he put into effect many of the things that he had been watching in conducting meetings. And years later, on the board of Black & Decker, I found that he had honed this style to where I think he's one of the best chairmen of a meeting I've ever seen.
Steve Muller became president of Johns Hopkins University in 1971. During his tenure, Al Decker became one of the university's most generous contributors.
My deep impression of Al Decker is that because he's personally modest and extremely practical and very rational, that when he thinks about supporting anything, he thinks in terms of the quality and the impact of whatever that cause or that institution is.
I think any man, any woman that's born into society owes something to the society in which they live. They shouldn't always be working for themselves only. I've taught a lot of people that to give is more pleasure than to take in many, many instances.
From then till now. And along the way, Al Decker laid the foundation for what Black & Decker is today. A $5 billion company with products and services in over 100 countries. With 8 #1 market positions. The world's largest supplier of power tools, power tool accessories, and security hardware. The U.S. leader in small household appliances. And the fastest growing plumbing products business in the country. A company with some of the strongest brand names in the world. Solid customer partnerships. And a continuous flow of new products. The legend continues.
Al has had more impact on Black & Decker than any other individual in the 80-year history of the company, including the 2 founders.
My experience at Black & Decker, I've had no bad years. I've all had good years, no matter how hard I worked or how bad things looked. I've enjoyed myself. Internationally, I'm very proud of the fact that I had a lot to do with the building of ourselves into a real international company. That's the thing that I'm most proud of. My father was a great leader, and he was a great ideal for me to follow and try to match up to. He was tough to follow, but I managed to make the grade, I think. Hopefully. When people ask me, what was I going to do in my life? I said, what the hell, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to work for Black & Decker.